They call this guy the Polish Poe or even the Polish Lovecraft. I think he is a beast of his own. Welcome, dear viewer. This is Vasil, the backwater librarian, the booktuber who digs up deserving authors from the past hardly ever talked about on BookTube. In this vein, I'll spontaneously present to you today my first encounter with Stefan Grabinski, a Polish genius of dark prose. I mean, just take a look at that guy and tell me you don't expect some great weird stories from him. Interestingly enough, although two continents apart, his biography is eerily reminiscent to that of Lovecraft. Lived in almost exactly the same time period and to almost the same age, was born into a well-off family but sank into poverty and obscurity towards the end of his life. Already in his youth was prone to illness and bad health. To top it all off, if I remember correctly, in the later part of his life he did somehow discover Lovecraft's stories and even started translating them, but this is where the similarities between these two authors end. Grabinski is very different from both Poe and Lovecraft. I'll talk about him based on this short story collection I've recently bought and read. That would be The White Virak by Stefan Grabinski, consisting of 23 of his short stories translated into Bulgarian. Kudos, by the way, to the Bulgarian publisher Istok Zapad and their recent collection called Magika, which introduces to the Bulgarian market not only Stefan Grabinski, but also such old-school weird fiction masters as Algernon Blackwood or Clark Ashton Smith. Don't worry that the book is in Bulgarian. Just so that we are on the same page, no pun intended, you'll find in the video description below a full list of the English titles of the stories along with their original date of publication, wherever I've been able to dig it up. Okay, let's dive directly into the stories and see what makes Grabinski such a unique and enjoyable author. The stories are permeated with kind of a surreal atmosphere. They usually take place in strange buildings and locales, oftentimes at the outskirts of a bigger city. A rose garden surrounded by an inexplicably tall brick wall, a bizarre farmhouse, an out-of-place village covered in tar. His language is very rich, but not to the point of becoming flowery or lapsing into purple prose. When it comes to his style, expressionism is the name of the game. Thus, he presents the world through the dark, skewed prism of his protagonists, giving it a wondrous and uncanny quality. So in the story, The Frenzied Farmhouse, a father of two purchases a bizarre, uninviting farm. He observes how its flora is in a constant, unforgiving, almost human-like battle. I can't get out of my mind the vivid picture of this stout, grown-up oak flexing its muscular branches and choking the life out of a young fir tree nearby. Another example we find in The Glance. The protagonist believes that behind every corner there lurks a frightful anomaly, a distortion of our normal world. And were he to turn the corner, he would abruptly come face to face with it. And so, in order to avoid this and give the anomaly time to dissipate, he plots his course through the city in such a way that he never has to make a 90-degree turn. Now, to an outside person, this will, of course, sound ludicrous, but once you're into the story, believe me, you might just also want to avoid those pesky corners as well. A prominent theme in his stories is the occurrence of parapsychological phenomena. These would be the ones at the very margins of psychology, such as telepathy. An interesting example of this we find in the story At the Villa by the Sea. The main protagonist starts suffering from subconscious imitation, i.e., he unknowingly starts speaking, acting, and moving in the manner of another person. Now, this is nothing new in our modern clown world, where it seems half of the girls nowadays look and act like Ariana Grande and the other half like Cardi B. But the problem is our protagonist here has never seen the person he's imitating, and moreover, that person has long been dead. Another prevalent theme, which came as a surprise for me, and which, by the way, stands in stark contrast to Lovecraft's writings, is the theme of sexuality. Several of the stories in this collection of mine featured both spectral and quite corporeal femme fatale. I came to an interesting conclusion concerning Grabinski's standard of female beauty. It seems that he prefers women of the ancient Roman type. He also calls them that way directly in the stories. These tall, dark, slender, raven-haired ladies with prominent Greco-Roman noses. I found this obsession of his with these type of ladies quite cute, to be honest. As a Lovecraft purist, I don't like sexuality creeping into my horror stories or into any type of stories or books I read, to be honest. I am prone to give Grabinski a pass here, however. In his stories, the sexual element is not done distastefully. The language with which it is described is quite subdued, and it is never vulgar. He doesn't go into detail more than necessary, and his stories never feature sex for sex's sake, so to speak. Several of the stories, positioned roughly in the middle part of the collection, have the Polish railways as their backdrop. From the humble information I was able to gather on the author and his opus, I believe that he originally published a separate short story collection consisting only of railway-themed stories called The Motion Demon. So I'm guessing the Bulgarian publisher here included these stories in the collection as well in order to represent this part of the author's body of work, and I think that it was the correct decision. For me personally, however, these were the least interesting stories. The railway background felt kind of forced and repetitive. There are still a couple of memorable stories among them as well, such as Ultima Thule and The Sloven. In conclusion, I'll have to say that I was left satisfied by all of the 23 stories in the book. There were no silly, trashy, or uninteresting stories at all. This first encounter with Grabinski as an author was excellent, I would say, and I grew to like the guy very much. I can see where he's coming from. I have been to Poland several times and have nothing but love and respect for the country and its people. The country is very beautiful with some great historical cities, but also I was able to witness what Grabinski describes in his stories, the contrast between the very nice historic city centers and then the let's say the bit of a neglected periphery of the cities where many of his stories take place. So yes, the country does have that uncanny mystical element to it. It also helps that spiritually the country is very much alive. I found this great, to be honest. As a Christian myself, I found it great that Christianity, mainly in its Catholic form, is pretty much alive and well in Poland, unlike in other European countries. Just to go a bit deeper into his stories, I've selected my favorite 3 from this collection and I would like to share them with you. These would be Projections, Shamota's Mistress, and The Vengeance of the Elementals. The story Projections is written in first person in the form of a journal. Its protagonist is a 40-plus-year-old male architect who happens to be single, by the way. Stressed out and tired from his everyday work, he decides to go on a vacation by himself in the Polish countryside to let off some steam. Right off the bat, this setting reminded me of M.R. James's story "Oh Whistle and I Will Come to You, My Lad." And I have to say, Grabinski's story is as enjoyable as M.R. James's. The architect goes on to discover a deserted and rather shunned monastery. He starts uncovering its secret and rather unholy past, lured, as it seems, by a spectral nun of exquisite Roman beauty. Several warning signs do come, but he tends to ignore them and continue to dig deeper and get closer to the beautiful nun. With his common sense clouded by both intellectual curiosity and male sexual drive, what will his ultimate fate turn out to be? Shamota's Mistress is also written in diary form. Its fictional author is one Jerzy Szamota, a kind of an urban bohemian. He has long admired this beautiful lady from the higher society called Jadwiga, but she has so far remained out of his reach. One day, however, he unexpectedly receives a letter from her. She had been on a longer tour of the Swiss Alps the past couple of years, and now that she is back in town, she would like to meet him and start a relationship with him. Although this letter and invitation do look suspicious, Jerzy nonetheless does accept the invitation and goes to her house. This kicks off a very passionate but rather secretive relationship which becomes stranger and stranger. Yeji starts posing himself questions. Why is it that we always meet at her place? How come we never go outside? How come her person and even her body start feeling different the more I spend time with her? I won't reveal any more of the plot and will let you find out who or what she will turn out to be. Finally, we have Vengeance of the Elementals. This is the story of one Anthony Chernotsky, a successful, experienced and very dedicated fire brigade chief. He has meticulously marked the occurrence of fires within his city going back years and even decades. The results of his analysis turn to be as bizarre as they are frightening. The locations of the fires aggregated throughout the years turn out to map certain humanoid figures. Either someone has been playing a prank all these years and decades, or there are sinister forces from beyond behind the fires in that particular city and area. The fire brigade chief is convinced that the latter is true, and he is determined to put an end to these evil fiery forces. As he ramps up his firefighting efforts, a game of cat and mouse begins between himself and these evil forces from beyond, these elementals. Who will come out on top? A great story with a very eerie and frightening premise. This is also the one story I found to be the most Lovecraftian. I'm so impressed with his stories by now that I would gladly like to read more of him. In my humble research, I could find just two mainstream editions in English. The first one is called The Dark Domain. Its contents more or less overlap with those of my book. However, the second one, called The Orchard of the Dead and Other Macabre Tales, seem to contain entirely different stories, so I think I would get and read that one sooner or later. That would be it for today, guys. I know we could touch upon many more points from the life and work of this great author, but I think this video has run long enough already. I would love to hear from you in the comments though. Have you read anything of his, and how do you find his stories, or maybe even some of the 4 novels he has written? Do you know of any interesting editions of his works you would like to recommend to me? I can read English and German. And if you liked my style of presentation as well as the topic of this video, I would be very happy if you could drop a like and subscribe. That way you would really help me to grow here on YouTube and to keep digging up for you lesser known but worthy and delightful books and authors. And remember, the Backwater Librarian guides you through the obscure pathways of literature. Thank you for watching and pleasant reading.